My name is Walter, and I'm 85 years old. I've lived a long life, seen the rise and fall of nations, watched wars begin and end, and witnessed inventions change the way we live, but nothing, not one thing could have prepared me for the night I left this world. You see, there comes a time in every person's life when all the noise of the world fades, when the years of striving, working, and worrying fall away. And only one question remains. What have you done with the breath God gave you? That night, I found out what happens when your time runs out. It started like any other evening. The sun had dipped below the trees, casting that golden glow that always reminded me of my late wife, Mary. We'd been married for 60 years before she passed, and even now, I still felt her presence in the quiet moments of the night. My chest had been feeling heavy for weeks, but at my age, you learn to shrug off pain and keep going. I told myself it was just age catching up, just a little fatigue. But deep down, I knew something was about to happen. As I sat in my chair, a sharp pain gripped my chest, stronger than anything I'd ever felt. I tried to call out, but no sound came. The room spun, my legs gave way, and I fell hard to the floor. The last thing I remember was the cold tile against my face and my granddaughter screaming for help. Then everything went silent. They told me later that my heart had stopped for several minutes. The doctors thought I was gone, but I wasn't gone. I was somewhere else. In an instant, the pain was gone. My body, frail and tired just moments before, felt light as air. I looked around, and before me stretched a tunnel of radiant, living light. It wasn't just bright, it was alive. It shimmered with warmth, love, and peace that words could never capture. I wasn't afraid. In fact, I felt more alive than I had in decades. My knees didn't ache, my back didn't throb, and every breath felt like life itself flowing through me. I knew I had crossed over. And then, I saw him. Jesus. There are no words in any language to describe that moment. His face shone brighter than the sun, yet it didn't blind me. His eyes burned with fire and compassion all at once. When he looked at me, I knew he saw everything I'd ever done, every mistake, every regret, every prayer whispered in the dark, and yet I also knew, without a shadow of doubt, that he loved me. Not because I was perfect, not because I had earned it, but because that's who he is, pure, unchanging love. Walter, he said, and my name rolled from his lips like thunder wrapped in melody. I have something to show you. In an instant, I was lifted higher, and what I saw next shook me to my core. I saw a young man named Charlie Kirk. I had watched him on television, heard his voice on the radio, bold, fearless, unashamed to speak truth. I always admired his courage, even when I didn't agree with everything he said. But now, Jesus was showing me something deeper. I saw Charlie standing before a great crowd, his words cutting through the air like lightning, and around him swirled shadows, dark, swirling forms that weren't human. Jesus said, "The world sees a man, but I want you to see the war." And I understood. These weren't political battles or debates. These were forces of darkness, spirits sent to silence truth, to twist light into confusion, to make good seem evil and evil seem good. I watched as Charlie fought that battle, not with weapons, but with conviction. And then I saw the moment his body could fight no more. The headlines of the world would one day call it an accident, but Jesus said, "I brought him home, not defeated, not silenced, but victorious. For in my kingdom, no voice that speaks truth is ever lost." Tears welled in my eyes. "Lord," I said, "why show this to me? I'm just an old man." And Jesus looked at me with such kindness. Because even in old age, you are my witness. The world believes what the headlines scream, but eternity tells the deeper story. Then, the vision changed again. This time, I saw my own life play before me, like an old film reel. I saw myself as a boy, hopeful, curious, full of dreams. I saw my wedding day, the first time I held my daughter. The nights I sat by my wife's hospital bed praying she'd make it through. But I also saw my failures. I saw the pride that made me hard, the selfishness that hurt those I loved, the years I wasted chasing things that didn't matter. I felt the weight of it all, and I hung my head in shame. But then Jesus placed his hand upon a great book, the story of my life, and his blood flowed over the pages, washing every stain away. Forgiven, he said. In that moment, I understood something I had known all my life but never truly believed. Grace is greater. Greater than sin. Greater than age. Greater than every regret that tries to haunt you. It doesn't matter how many years you've lived, or how far you've wandered. If you're still breathing, God isn't finished with you yet. Then Jesus spoke again, his voice firm but full of compassion. Walter, tell them eternity is real. Tell them death is not the end. Tell them truth is not what the world decides it is. Tell them I am coming soon. And then he added, do not let them waste their lives, whether young like Charlie or old like you. The time is short, and every soul matters. Before I could respond, I felt myself being pulled backward faster and faster through that tunnel of light, until suddenly my eyes opened, and I was back in my hospital bed, gasping for air. Nurses were rushing around me, my granddaughter crying at my side. I was alive, but I was not the same man. I came back with a fire in my soul. You see, when you've looked into the eyes of Jesus, when you've seen eternity, you can't go back to living halfway. I don't care if people believe me. I don't care if they laugh. I know what I saw. I saw Jesus. I saw the truth about life, death, and what waits beyond. And friend, let me tell you, life is shorter than you think. Death is closer than you realize. But eternity, oh, eternity is longer than you can imagine. So don't waste your days. Don't waste your soul chasing things that won't last. Call on him. Seek him while you still can. Because one day the clock will stop, the breath will leave your body, and only one question will matter. Did you know Jesus Christ? At 85, I can tell you this: I have no time left for games. I'm living proof that his mercy still reaches the old, the weary, the doubtful. If he gave me one more chance, he can give you one too. So let this be your wake-up call. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for someday. Today is the day of salvation. Because when that final hour comes, and it will, the only thing that will matter is whether you heard his voice and said, yes, this is my story, this is my truth, and I'm telling it while I still have breath. When I crossed into that place beyond time, beyond pain, beyond the boundaries of this world, I found myself standing in a light so pure, so alive, that words fail to capture it. It wasn't just brightness, it was life itself, pulsing, breathing, welcoming. I felt peace deeper than any I had known in all my 85 years. My mind was sharp, my body felt whole again, and every fiber of my being knew that I was home. But then, through the brilliance of that radiant glow, a figure began to take form. I didn't need anyone to tell me who he was. It was Jesus. His presence filled everything. No shadow could exist in the space where he stood. His face shone with a light brighter than the sun, and yet it didn't hurt my eyes. His eyes were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, like fire and water mingled together, fierce with justice but overflowing with love. When he looked at me, he didn't have to say a word. In that gaze, I knew he had seen my entire life. The good, the bad, the things I was proud of, and the things I had hoped no one would ever know, and he loved me still. Then, his voice broke the silence. "Walter," he said, and my name rolled from his lips like thunder wrapped in mercy, like music that reached into the deepest places of my soul. "I have something to show you." In a single breath, I was lifted into a vision unlike anything I'd ever seen. The light around me seemed to shift and swirl, and then it opened into a great plain where a man stood before a multitude of people. I recognized him immediately, Charlie Kirk. I'd watched him from my living room many times. That young man with bold words and fire in his voice. I remembered thinking, he's got courage. But now I saw something that television could never show. Around him, unseen by the crowds, were shadows moving in the air. Dark, writhing forms that carried a weight of evil. They weren't men. They weren't made of flesh and blood. These were spiritual forces, demonic powers circling like vultures, whispering lies, pressing against him with every word he spoke. Yet Charlie kept standing, his face set like stone, his voice rising with conviction. The more he spoke truth, the more furious those dark forces became. I wanted to shout, to warn him, but Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder. "The world sees a man," he said, "but I want you to see the war." And suddenly, I understood. Every voice that stands for truth faces opposition far beyond what human eyes can see. It's not just politics, not just opinions, it's a spiritual battle. Light against darkness, truth against deception. Charlie wasn't just speaking into microphones. He was standing on the front lines of a war for souls. The enemy had thrown everything at him: hatred, mockery, exhaustion, lies. But he kept pressing forward, not in his own strength, but in mine. Jesus' words echoed in my heart like waves rolling across eternity. Then I saw the moment that would one day shake the world, the moment of Charlie's death. The light around him flickered, his body gave way, and the dark forces surged forward as if they had won. But before I could cry out, a flash of divine power split the darkness apart. Angels descended like bolts of lightning, scattering the shadows. And I saw Jesus himself step forward and lift Charlie into his arms. "I brought him home," he said. "Not defeated, not silenced, but victorious." I realized then that what the world would call tragedy, heaven calls triumph. His mission was complete, his assignment fulfilled, his reward secure. The Lord looked at me, his eyes steady and filled with truth. "In my kingdom," he said, "no voice that speaks for truth is ever lost. Every seed of courage, every word of faith, every act of obedience lives on and multiplies for eternity." I felt tears stream down my face, though I didn't even think this place had tears. "Lord," I whispered, "why show this to me? I'm just an old man. I'm nobody special." Jesus smiled, and that smile carried the kindness of 1,000 suns. "Because even in old age, you are my witness," he said. "You have seen much, and you will tell much. The world believes only what the headlines scream, but eternity tells the deeper story. I am showing you what the eyes of flesh cannot see, so that when you return, you will speak the truth not with fear, but with fire." His words settled into me like living light. In that moment, I felt both humbled and overwhelmed. I thought about how easily we judge what happens on earth, how quickly we assume defeat when we see a good man fall, How often we forget that God's ways are not our ways. I realized that Charlie's battle wasn't lost, it was finished, and the victory was eternal. Jesus began to show me flashes of others, men and women who had spoken boldly, who had faced ridicule and rejection, yet stood firm for truth. Each one, when their time came, was welcomed home the same way. Not with sorrow, but with joy unspeakable. Heaven celebrated their faith, their endurance, their obedience. The world may have written their stories one way, but heaven had the final word, and that word was victory. Jesus turned back to me. "Walter," he said, "I know you have wrestled with doubt, with fear, with the thought that your time has passed. But as long as you have breath, your purpose is not over. I am raising witnesses in every generation, young and old, to testify of my truth, to tell the world that there is more than what they see." His voice was strong, filled with both authority and tenderness. "What you have seen here is not for curiosity, it is for courage. Go and tell them that light is still stronger than darkness, that truth cannot be buried, and that those who stand for righteousness never stand alone." My heart burned within me as he spoke. It was like every cell in my being came alive with purpose. I wanted to stay there forever, in that perfect peace, under that gaze that saw everything and yet loved me completely. But I also knew he was giving me a mission to go back and tell what I had seen, to remind the world that there is a war beyond what we can see, and that heaven always wins. As the vision began to fade, Jesus' final words echoed like a bell that would never stop ringing. "Walter, tell them that in my kingdom, no truth is ever wasted, no voice is ever silenced, and no victory is ever forgotten. Tell them that I am coming soon." And then, like being caught in a rush of wind, I felt myself pulled backward, faster and faster through the light. The glory dimmed, the brilliance faded, and suddenly the cold air of the hospital room filled my lungs again. I opened my eyes, gasping, trembling, but changed forever. I had seen Jesus. I had seen the battle. And I knew now more than ever, what the world calls the end is often just heaven's beginning. After Jesus showed me the vision of Charlie Kirk's victory and the unseen war between light and darkness, the light around us began to shift again. It felt as though time itself was folding back, and I knew that what I was about to see next would cut deep into the core of who I was. The brilliance around me softened, and suddenly, I was standing in front of what looked like a great book, massive, radiant, alive. Its pages shimmered like glass, yet I knew this was no ordinary book. This was the record of my life. Jesus stood beside me, his presence steady and kind, but his eyes told me this was not a moment for excuses or pride. "Walter," he said, "you have seen the war for truth. Now you will see the truth about yourself." And with that, the book opened, and my life began to unfold before me like a movie on the canvas of eternity. I saw myself as a boy again, barefoot, running through the fields of my father's farm, laughing without a care in the world. My mother's voice calling me home for supper, my father's strong hands teaching me the value of work, the smell of the soil after rain. There was innocence there, a lightness of heart I hadn't felt in years. But then, as the pages turned, I watched that boy grow into a man confident, ambitious, proud. I saw the moments I thought no one else saw. The harsh words I spoke to my wife in anger. The times I put work before family. The prayers I hurried through just to check a box. I saw the people I judged, the opportunities I ignored, the hearts I wounded without even realizing it. Each scene hit me like a wave, one after another, until I could barely stand. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Because in that place, there is no pretending, no hiding. The truth isn't there to condemn you, it's there to free you. I watched as my years passed before me like a river raising my children, providing for them, but sometimes missing the deeper things that really mattered. I saw the empty church pews I sat in, singing the hymns but never letting the words sink in. I saw my Bible sitting unopened on the nightstand while I told myself, tomorrow I'll start again. I saw my wife, Mary, praying for me every morning, her faith unshakable, even when mine had grown cold. And when the vision reached the day I buried her, I felt the ache all over again. I had told her I'd be fine, that I'd keep my faith strong. But the truth was, after she was gone, I stopped really living. Tears streamed down my face as scene after scene played before me, the years I wasted in bitterness, the pride that kept me from forgiving, the fear that made me silent when I should have spoken love. I wanted to cry out, "Lord, stop, please." But I knew He wasn't showing me this to hurt me. He was showing me this because every part of it mattered. And then the light grew brighter, and Jesus placed His hand on my shoulder. "Walter," He said softly, "you see now how easily a man can live long and still miss what's eternal. But this is not where your story ends." With that, He turned to the great book of my life. The pages were filled with the record of everything I had ever done. Every word, every thought, every secret. I watched in silence as He laid His pierced hand upon it. And then something miraculous happened. From His hand flowed a crimson light, rich and alive, spreading across the pages. It wasn't ink, it was His blood. The stains of my life began to fade. The harsh words, the selfish acts, the wasted years, all of it washed away in that crimson flood until the pages shone white as snow. And then He said one word, "Forgiven." That word rang through me like thunder wrapped in mercy. Forgiven. Not halfway. Not conditionally, completely. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed. I had spent my life believing in grace, but never truly receiving it. I thought forgiveness was something for the young, for those who still had time to make things right. But in that moment, I understood that grace doesn't care how old you are, how far you've wandered, or how many mistakes you've made. Grace is not bound by age or time. It is the heartbeat of heaven, reaching even into the final breath of a dying man. Jesus looked at me with a smile that melted every ounce of shame I'd ever carried. "Walter," He said, "you feared death because you thought judgment would be the end. But I tell you the truth, it is only the beginning. My blood does not just erase, it restores. What you thought was lost, I can redeem. The years you wasted, I can rewrite with purpose. The love you failed to give, I can multiply through the story you will tell. My grace is greater than your regret." Those words felt like life itself entering me. I thought about all the people who live every day thinking it's too late to change, too late to believe, too late to make peace. But standing there, I knew the truth. It's never too late for God's mercy. Not while you still have a heartbeat, not while you still have breath. Because His grace doesn't depend on what you've done, but on what He's already done on that cross. Jesus reached out His hand, and as I took it, I felt every burden lift off my soul. It was as if every sorrow, every regret, every ounce of guilt I had carried for decades dissolved into the light. My heart, once heavy with fear, felt weightless, free. And then He said, "Walter, when you return, tell them what you've seen. Tell them that my grace is greater than sin, greater than age, greater than any regret that chains the soul. Tell them that I do not measure people by their failures but by their faith. I do not see the years they wasted. I see the moment they surrender. I do not count the times they fell. I count the moment they call on my name." I couldn't speak. I could only nod. Because how do you answer love like that? I looked once more at the book. Clean, shining, restored. And I realized something. My story wasn't over. Every breath I still had on earth was now borrowed grace. Jesus looked into my eyes and said, "Go back and live forgiven. Don't let shame hold you. Don't let regret silence you. You are free." And when they ask how a man of 85 could still change, tell them this, because my mercy never grows old. In that moment, I felt the power of eternity pulsing through me. The same hands that had been pierced for my sins were now holding me up. The same blood that washed away my failures was giving me life again. I realized that heaven doesn't just redeem your soul, it redeems your story. No matter how broken, how late, or how forgotten you think it is, grace can still rewrite the ending. Then the light began to fade, and I knew I was being pulled back. But before everything went dark, I heard him whisper, "Walter, remember this. My grace is greater." And when I opened my eyes again in that hospital room, gasping for air, I knew I had been given one more chance, not to earn forgiveness, but to live in it. And from that day on, I vowed that every word, every moment, every breath I had left would be spent telling the world that the love of Jesus is stronger than sin, deeper than time, and greater than any regret we carry. Because I know now, with all my heart, that grace isn't just a story, it's the reason I'm still here. As the vision of my life faded and the radiance of his forgiveness still wrapped around me like a robe of light, I stood there trembling before Jesus, the King of Kings, the one whose voice had created galaxies and yet now spoke my name with gentleness. The air itself seemed to hum with his presence, and though there was no sense of time where I stood, I knew I was standing in eternity, where moments have meaning far deeper than years. I wanted to stay there forever. I wanted to fall at his feet and never rise again. But then his eyes, those eyes like fire and mercy intertwined, looked deep into mine, and I sensed something stirring. It wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. "Walter," he said. And when he said my name, it echoed through my very being. "What you have seen is not for you alone. I am sending you back." I was silent. My thoughts swirled. "Back?" I asked, almost in disbelief. "Lord, I am old. I've lived my life. My strength is gone." He smiled with that same patient kindness that could calm storms. "No, Walter," he said. "Your purpose is not measured by age, but by obedience. I am giving you a message to carry, a warning, a hope, a call for every soul still breathing on that earth you call home." He stepped closer, and as he spoke, it was as if the universe itself leaned in to listen. "Tell them," he said, his voice resonating like the sound of many waters, "that eternity is real. Tell them that death is not the end. Tell them that I am coming soon." Those words burned into my heart like fire. He lifted his hand and pointed toward the horizon of light, and in an instant, I saw the earth suspended in space, beautiful, yet bruised. I saw cities glowing with lights, people rushing through their days, chasing wealth, chasing fame, chasing everything except what truly mattered. I saw churches filled with noise but empty of surrender, believers distracted, hearts divided, time slipping away like sand through their fingers. I saw young people like Charlie, passionate, bold, yet crushed by the weight of battles they didn't even realize were spiritual. And I saw the old, like me, who thought their season of purpose had passed, when in truth, heaven still had work for them to do. Jesus spoke again, his voice both tender and thunderous. "Walter, the world thinks it has time, but time is shorter than they know. The trumpet is not silent forever. The world is spinning toward its appointed hour. Tell them that every soul matters to me. The young, the old, the rich, the poor, every single one. Tell them that I died for them all. Tell them that my mercy still calls. But soon that door will close. Tell them not to waste their days chasing shadows when the light of the world is still reaching for them. As he spoke, I felt the weight of eternity pressing upon me, the realization that every heartbeat on earth is borrowed grace. Every sunrise is another chance to return to him, and every act of love is a seed planted for eternity. I fell to my knees, weeping, because I knew he was right. For 85 years I had lived as if there would always be another tomorrow. But here, in his presence, I understood that tomorrow is not promised, and eternity is far closer than we think. Lord, I whispered, what can I possibly do? Who would listen to an old man like me? Jesus extended his hand, and when he touched my shoulder, I felt strength surge through me like lightning. You will speak, he said. Not with eloquence, but with truth. Not with power, but with passion. Because what comes from a heart that has seen eternity carries more authority than 1,000 sermons. He looked into me once more, and I knew this was no suggestion, it was a divine command. Walter, he continued, tell them not to waste their lives. Tell them to forgive quickly, to love deeply, to pray earnestly. Tell them that bitterness robs the soul, that pride blinds the heart, that fear is a liar. Tell them that I am still the way, the truth, and the life. Tell them that I am coming not as a baby in a manger, but as the King of glory, and every eye will see me. Tell them that the time for playing church is over, that this is the hour to choose who they will serve. Tell them that the delay of my coming is not denial, it is mercy. I am giving one last chance for hearts to turn, for nations to repent, for souls to awaken. But that mercy will not last forever. I could barely breathe as he spoke. His words weren't harsh. They were holy. They were love in its purest form. A love that refuses to let humanity sleep through eternity. He lifted his hand again, and I saw waves of light spreading across the globe. Some hearts opened and received it, shining brightly. Others turned away, clinging to darkness. Many will hear, he said, but few will listen. Yet you must still tell them, because even one soul is worth the journey. Then he paused, and his eyes softened again. And remember this, Walter, my grace is still greater. Even now, even in these final days, grace is reaching, forgiving, restoring. I did not die to condemn, but to save. Tell them that as long as there is breath, there is hope. In that moment, I realized that what he was giving me wasn't just a message, it was a mission. My body might have been frail, my years few, but my purpose was renewed. I wasn't sent back just to exist. I was sent back to testify. I was to tell the world that heaven is real, that hell is real, and that eternity is not a story, it's our destination. I was to remind people that every choice matters, every moment counts, and that Jesus Christ is not a distant idea but a living Savior, calling every heart home. And then, as he finished speaking, the light around me began to swirl once more. I felt the pull, strong and irresistible, like the current of a great river drawing me back through the tunnel of radiance. I didn't want to leave, but I knew I had to. Jesus' final words rang out behind me, echoing in my spirit like the beating of a drum. Walter, tell them that I am coming soon. Tell them that eternity waits for no one. Tell them to be ready. And then it happened. I gasped, my lungs burning, my eyes snapping open. The harsh glare of hospital lights replaced the glory of heaven. I could hear machines beeping, nurses shouting, my granddaughter crying out, "He's back! Grandpa's alive!" I was alive but never the same. Something had shifted deep inside me. The fear of death was gone, replaced by a fire that no earthly thing could quench. I realized I had been given one final assignment, one final gift of time, not to waste but to use for His glory. So now, as I sit here and tell you this, I don't speak as a man afraid of death. I speak as one who has seen what waits beyond it. I have walked through that light, stood before my Savior, and heard His voice. And I am here to tell you, my friend, eternity is real. Heaven is real. Jesus is alive. Don't waste your days chasing things that will fade. Don't trade forever for what will crumble in your hands. Seek Him while you still can. Because when that final hour comes, and it will, the only thing that will matter is whether you knew Him. Everything else, money, fame, power, pride, will vanish like smoke. But if you know Jesus, if you walk with Him, if you surrender your heart to Him, then death is not the end. It's the doorway to life everlasting. This is my story, my mission, and my message. Time is short, grace is still calling, and the Savior is nearer than you think. So be ready, my friend, for the trumpet will sound, and eternity will begin.